Kim sighed as she affixated the visitor's badge onto her shirt. Head next to her, Ron had moved closer and squeezed her hand in support. It had been 5 weeks since Faye had chosen her name, and so far things had been working. Kim had held up at the end of her bargain, letting Faye have time without the communicator recording her movements. But she was unsure if her darker half was up to something. There had been an increase of the muggling statics in Tri-City over the next 5 weeks, and Kim was sure that Faye had something to do with it. But as she hadn't noticed any money missing from her account, nor had Faye left any message asking for more. What she had been leaving was a number of dirty dishes in the apartment, a small fountain of the Pad Benatar's CDs on the desk in the restraint room, a rectangular supply of empty boxes in the bathroom. There had been any messages left on the subject, all of which had gone unanswered. The silence, coupled with some of the things Kim had seen on the communicator files of the computer, convinced her that Faye was doing more than just killing time in music stores and God only knows how many motel rooms. Hence her and Ron taking a visit to see one person who could point them in the direction of a cure. They had signed the receipts presented by their personal belongings as the guard buzzed them through the visitor's room. 2 of them took seats in the cheap plastic chrome table in the middle of the room and waited. "Do you really think she'll help us?" Ron asked. "I mean, since we did blow up her lab and all." "She blew up the lab herself, Ron," Kim answered, "and I'm hoping to appeal her sense of scientific responsibility. Knowing her, she was trying to create an antidote for the formula anyway. I doubt she wanted to unleash any evil on the animals in the world, mutated or not. All she cared about is cute and cuddly." "Good point, but still." Ron's reply was cut off as the door opened, and the guard escorted Dee and Amy into the room. She stared at Kim and Ron for a moment, then smiled cheerily and then took a seat at the table. As she sat down, she pulled her otterfly cuddle bunny from her pocket and began stroking it. "Well, isn't this nice?" Amy asked, as she looked at her teen heroes. "And what can I do for the 2 of you?" "We'll get right to the point, Dr. Hall," Kim said. Amy quirked her eyes and eyebrow. "Dr. Hall?" she asked. "Since when have you been so formal, Kim?" Kim ignored the question. "We all know what you were working on, and what was in that notebook that you have just been injected with." Amy's smile sharpened. "Do you know? That isn't that interesting?" "We want the cure, lady," Ron said sharply. "You have been working on it." Amy giggled. "You're so cute when you try to be tough." She then shifted her gaze to Kim. "And what makes you think I'd be able to help you?" "We know what you do, Amy," Kim answered. "And aren't you going to type in what you want to unleash of vicious animals on people? I'm betting you that you were synthesizing the Jekyll formula so you could reverse it to make anybody injected so with the good to cause cavities." "Well, if you say so," Amy said, leaning back on the chair. Kim and Ron looked at each other and then back at Amy. Kim took a deep breath. "I'm asking you to help me, please. These changes are becoming a lot more frequently now, and she is not a very nice person." "I could see your dilemma, but unfortunately all my notes were in the lab, which someone forced me to destroy since we were stuck on the nose where it wasn't wanted." "Don't play dumb with me, Amy," Kim said sharply. "We both know you're smarter than you let on. Do you remember anything of that notes? Anything?" Amy giggled again. "Well, to be honest, I do remember quite a bit about how to recreate the formula, and it'd be pretty easy to set up a new lab trying to figure out the antidote." Kim sighed in relief and slumped to her seat. "Tell us what you need. I think I can call in some favors." "Yes, Kim, but there is one teensy-weensy problem," Amy said. Kim sat back up in her chair. "What?" she said. Amy's grin turned evil, and then she reached into her pocket, pulling out another cuddle bunny. This one was between a cross of a ferret and a cockatoo. It was also a rich gold color. "Well, I really don't want to help you," Amy said, cooing the toy. "Kimmy's a little meanie, isn't she?" "Yes, she is." Kim's eyes widened and frowned. "A gold-class ferret cockatoo? Ew, there's only 6 of those." A chilling thought came to her mind. Where did you get it? Amy's grin was now far less pleasant, much more sadistic. "Why don't you ask Faye?" Kim and Ron stared at her and said nothing. After a few moments, Amy broke the silence. "Oh yes, Kim, she was here. She said that you might come to visit, and she brought this lovely little Farragakatu. And to be honest with you, Kim, I like her loads more than I like you. Kim then slumped into her chair again. Disappointment cleared to her face. Ron then looked concerned. Amy pocketed the cuddle buddies and signaled the guard who entered. I think I'm done talking with these people. I'd like to go back to my cell now, please, Amy said pleasantly. The guard then looked at Kim and Ron, but were not getting a response, shrugged, and they took Amy by the arm. As the two of them reached into the door, Amy looked back over her shoulder. Goodbye, Kim. I'd say see you later, but somehow I don't think we'll be going to see each other again. TTFN. Amy then gave a swarmy little wave and then left with the guard. Kim then leaned forward and placed her hands in her face. Ron slid closer and concerned. KP, you okay? He frowned. When he got no response, Kim, you're scaring your boyfriend. Kim then raised her head quickly, but Ron couldn't see the tears in the corners of her eyes before she wiped them away. I'm fine, Ron. Just worried? Disappointed, but Kim plastered a smile on the face. She's not only the gymnastic out there. There's gonna be something we can do. We just gotta figure out what it is. Yeah, Ron said. Doubt if went to his voice. Kim ignored the tone and then got up from the table. Ron then followed suit, and the two of them headed out of the room towards the car. As they reached into the parking lot, the communicator beeped. Kim then brought it up and clicked on it. Hey Wade, DNA Amy was a bust. Any luck on your end? Wade shook his head. Nothing yet, but I'm working on it. So what's the sitch then? Well, I just got a call from Dr. Director. Professor Dementor is up to something big, and Global Justice wants you and Ron to help out. They're sending you a jet to meet you at your place. Can do, Wade. We're on it, Kim replied. Well then, I know that you're coming. Wade signed off. Kim then got out her keys and deactivated the alarm. Kim, when is Faye supposed to clock in? Ron asked as he got in the car. It's late night for her. She takes over at 11, Kim replied. Hyde, starting the car, and she began to make her way out of the parking lot and onto the freeway. It's 4 now. If we hurry, we could take out Dementor and get back to the apartment before she shows up. You sure? Ron said. She think it might be earlier. If that happens, you'll just have to make sure she helps out then. You can do that, can't you? Kim snapped. Ron then frowned at her, surprised at her outburst. Kim's expression softened as she just realized what she just said. Sorry, she said quickly. I do appreciate all the help you've been giving me the last couple weeks, Ron. Just stick with me, okay? It helps to know when you're there and when I'm not. Ron nodded. You know I won't give up on you, even if she tries. Kim gave a smile. The rest of the drive was made in silence. Professor Dementor interrupted himself in mind-maniacal laugh when the intruder alarms went off. Sir, the perimeter defenses have been breached, came the cry of one of his henchmen from the security monitoring station. Dementor rolled his eyes. Yes, thank you, Gunter. I realize now from these blaring noises coming from the intruder alarm. The evil genius climbed down from his perch from the lab and walked over to the security station. Now, Zen, let us see who has decided to drop in. The alarm continued to blare. Dementor then clicked on for the alarm cameras, finally getting on several Global Justice teams, making their way onto the compound. He grinned as he noticed that they had decided to enter through the weak points. His lair defenses, that just happened to be lined up with mostly booby traps. He just had security cameras to record and save those feeds. It would just make fine for a late night viewing later. He clicked through more feeding and then grinned wide. The hero thief, impossible and are not likely at all psychic. And oh look, Dr. Director has decided to chaperone them. The romantic out in nauseating. Dementor then turned from his cringing lackey and looked into the monitors. If they had continued their current course, they would have just come out in testing for the floor at the robot bots. His grin widened even further. Well then, let's see if we can create a little welcoming reception then, men. The security henchman smirked, and then he hit the button to the console. Robber bots? Kim asked Dr. Director, as they made their way through the carnivorous sewers underneath Dementor's lair. Yes, Director replied, as she shone her flashlight deeper into the tunnels. We've been following a series of feasts around the world for the last few weeks. They have been very frequent, but excellently planned. In fact, for the longest time, we thought it might have been another attack by Dr. Draken's BB robots. But the items stolen hadn't been anything to do with the creation of more BBs. So that's when the building then? If it's not more robots? Kim asked. That's the thing, Dr. Director replied. Kim detected a note, what sounded like an embarrassment in the G-E-J letter's voice. We have no idea. None of the equipment stolen could have been used to create some sort of cold fusion device. So, Dementor has a giant refrigerator of the room of his disposal? Ron asked. Kim and Director looked at him incredulously. What? It could happen. Anyway, we have no reason to believe that he's probably using the technology to create some kind of cold fusion powered by a doomsday device, Dr. Director continued. Of course he is, Kim sighed. You think he'd get bored of this kind of thing after a while? Bad guy, Kim, Ron said, not really known for the diversity in the evil plan department. True, Kim agreed. The three of them continued to go through the tunnels, eventually finding a ladder leading upwards. Where does this lead? Kim asked. Dr. Director pulled out a small data pad and brought it up to the blueprints. Looks like it leads to the testing floor. Dementor uses it to test out his robots and vehicles, she answered. I'll go first. You two follow me up. The three of them made their way up to the ladder. Director opened up an access panel and climbed through it, shining the flashlight all around, checking the darkened room before motioning Kim and Ron to climb up. No sooner had the three of them got to their feet than the lights had flashed on, blinding them. A steel panel then slid over to the access hatch, stealing in the room as their vision cleared, as all the three heroes saw Professor Dementor standing on an observation deck and looked over the room. He grinned down at them before letting out an evil laugh. Welcome, hero thief type of people, to your doom, he gloated. I'm afraid Farlene Director Zatur Global Justice Goon Squad will not be joining us. Dementor then hit a button, and two large view screens mounted, and it was illuminated, showing the Global Justice agents under heavy guarded and laser cages. Let them go, Dementor, Director snarled. Ja, I know the drill. Let me cut to the Z's chase then. Dementor then hit another button, and a battery of cannon lasers spattered out from the ceiling and began firing in all directions. Split up, Kim cried, leaping out of the way of a volley of the laser field, and the two other did likewise. Ron dashed across the room, dodging left and right, with each laser blast seemed to land directly on his path. Kim then dashed towards one of the wall, timing their blast, and had her head. She paused in front of the wall, waited for a second, then leaped and bounced off the wall, right through the air. She repositioned herself and grabbed the barrel of one of the laser cannons, swinging her leg to spin the cannon around and use it to blast its beneath him. A few stray shots managed to hit a section of the wall in such a way that it blew a hole in one of the walls. The remaining cannons had sputtered and died. Kim smiled and looked up at Dementor, dropped off by the door. So is that all you got, Professor? She taunted, up to the observation deck. Dementor growled. Not by a long shot, Frawling. He stabbed another button in the console in front, and the hatches opened the ceiling. A few seconds, the platoon robots dropped into the room. They were spindly, humanoid-shaped constructs, with faceless heads and wary flames. Great, we're being attacked by Bronicles, Kim said. Ron and Dr. Director joined her as the robots began to close in. Kimberly, Director whispered, if I'm right, that hole you blew in the wall leads to Dementor's cold fusion device. Gee, that's convenient, Ron said. You don't see that kind of a comedy in space layers much anymore. Focus, Ron, Kim said. What do you need from us? Keep them busy for as long as enough to me to get through the wall. I'll take care of the doomsday device. Check, Ron said. He glanced over at Kim and grinned. Kim then smiled back, knowing that Director had no idea what they had been working on since the Laudorian invasion. The expression on Global Justice Leader's face was priceless, in which he saw that both Kim and Ron leaped into the fray and began taking out the robots with deadly efficiency. She then took off the shocked expressions on Ron's newfound fighting skills and made sure Dementor wasn't looking and ducked in the hole in the wall. For a high-tech fusion-powered doomsday device, it was easily to blow up. Kim fired her grapple gun onto the rafters and kicked off, swinging into the team of robots, knocking them off of their feet and crashing them into the wall. She cut the cable and flipped through the air, kicking another one down, before landing at her feet, one leg extended to cushion the impact. She glanced around behind her to see how Ron was doing. She smiled to herself as she saw Ron dive between the legs of one of the robots, hook one of its ankles with his feet, and then grab the ankles of another robot and brought them down together with a loud smash. Ron then rolled out of the way of the wreckage and got to his feet, spun on the spot, and caught into the bot that was sneaking up on the square with the chest plate. Up on the observation deck, Dementor blinked at Ron's fighting powerless. First, Kim Possible gets Z's self-healing spring stepping with the Z-handing Fing battlesuit, and now Z's sidekick had become a martial arts master? Why am I Z the last one to know about these things? Deciding on to vent his frustration in a true villainous style, he pressed a button on the console in front of him. Let's just see you like this one. Ron! Kim cried, kicking the robot away from her. Maneuver 12. On it, KP, Ron called back. He leaped into the air and pulled out an impressive handspring shoulders off the bot that had been fighting over to Kim. Kim blinked as she landed next to her. Nice one, she said, and Ron smiled. Learn from the best, he replied. Kim returned the smile and then turned back to Ron. Likewise, the robots closed in, surrounding the two teen heroes. Kim and Ron hooked their arms together. Ready? Kim said. Set, Ron replied. Go! Both of them leaped into the air and began running across the fronts with robots in front of them. They began running in circles, letting the pure momentum carry them along, kicking each bot as they turned around and came forward to attack. They hovered over the parallel to the ground, winding the attacks and machine numbers. When the group begins to thin to the point that their each momentum couldn't carry them any further, they unhooked their arms and pushed off each other's backs, plowing the feet first into the remaining few bots around them. They high-fived each other. Nice work, partner, Kim said. Ron colored slightly and smiled. Thanks, KP. It was your idea. True, but I couldn't do it without... Kim was suddenly frozen and blinked rapidly. Ron's smile turned quickly into a concerned, full frown. As he watched, he saw Kim's eyes change from green to purple and then back to green again. Kim? He shook her shoulders. Stay with me, Kim. Faye, you clock in yet. Kim shook her head and looked at Ron. She's coming, Ron. I don't think I'm going to be able to stop her. And now Z's through impossible. Prepare to meet your Doom Z in the hand of the greatest invention to date, the Z Robot 9000. The two teen heroes watched as the steel-plated door across the room opened and hulking from the Oberbot lurched into the room. A mass gleaming chrome and flashing lights. Its limbs were the size of tree trunks, and from the lack of treads was the only thing preventing it from being classified as a tank. The two teens gulped, and the shadow of the bot passed over them. Ron felt Kim took his hand and squeezed it. I'll do the best I can, Ron, she said quietly. But if she shows up, try and get her to help you and Dr. Director. Ron opened his mouth and tried to protest, but changed his mind and nodded. So let's take it out before she decides to show up. You hit it high. And you hit low, Kim finished. As her usual confident grin returning, then Ron knelt down and laced his fingers together. Kim then placed one foot in them, and then Ron thrust her into the air. As Kim somersaulted towards the air of the Oberbot head, Ron then kneeled down and then dashed towards its legs, slamming his shoulders into the knee like a linebacker. As Ron plowed into the robot's legs, Kim then lifted one leg high and brought it down to the mid-air axe kick into the machine's head. The chrome skull caved in under the power behind the kick, and as Kim kicked off the bot and backflipped to the ground, Ron managed to knock the robot legs out from under it. Unfortunately, he did know in such a way that the bot fell forward towards Kim. Kim! Ron cried out. as the bot fell forward directly to Kim, and as he saw the bot crash out in the air, he winced in pain in the anticipation of the impact, which did not come. Ron blinked and stared at the loop-sided bot, which it looked like a very hovering off the ground. It was a loud grunt of extermination, and the bot flew into the air and directly towards the observation deck. Dementor's eyes widened under his hood and then saw the bot running towards him. "Oh, V's and doodles," he muttered just before the bot slammed into the observation deck. He groaned loudly as he fought to keep his conclusions after the impact. He pulled himself out from under the bot's wreckage and rolled onto his back. Her glance was up when he heard a snap and felt a cold metal surrounding his chest. Dr. Director stood over him, holding on to the other hand of the handcuffs. "Game's over, Professor. The gold fusion alkylation disinhibitor is shut down," she said, smiling. Dementor smiled back. "Perhaps, fallen director, but since I've always enjoyed games to which they go into overtime." And when his hand was free, he quickly tapped into his belt. Dr. Director snapped the other handcuff onto the railing of the observation deck and looked down at the testing floor, where several other doors were opening. At least there were 40 robots behind the door, and only 2 teenage heroes to deal with them. Director was unsure what was going to be a slaughter, and she was right. "Kim, are you okay?" Ron asked, as he hurried towards where Kim was standing. As he got closer, his expression fell. Kim's hair was only about 2 shades of too dark, and she looked over his shoulder. Purple eyes flashed in amusement. "Sorry, Ronnie," Faye Morgan answered. "Kimmy's checked out for the night. She just couldn't hack it, so I stepped in, and I'm stepping out. Ha!" Faye then reached into the holster of the strap leg and pulled out her grapple gun, took the aim and was about to pull the trigger when the doors surrounding the room opened, revealing an army of robots. "Oh, man," Ron said, seeing the army. "Faye, I realize this isn't really your thing and all, but..." Faye held up a hand, cutting him off, returning the grapple gun to the holster on the other hand. "No, it isn't, but then again, these things aren't actually people, are they?" "Well, Ron began, noting the bots getting closer. "I guess not. I mean, they are robots after all." He trailed off as he saw the demented gleam in Faye's eyes, and her lips curled into a psychotic grin. Faye cracked the knuckles in each hand, then her neck. "Good," she said. "This is going to be a lot more fun than bar hopping." With that, she leaped into the air and crashed into the crowd of robots. She grabbed the arm of one with a vicious yank. Pulling off the arm, and proceeded to knock the heads off with the robots on it. When she got tired of that, she dove down and grabbed one of the bots by the ankles and began spinning them in place, knocking dozens of robots onto the walls. 3 of the remains of the bots were swinging around as it began sparking dangerously. She looked up around for another target, paused, and then dove aside of all 3 of them, tried to track her down from behind. She then kicked the head off of the one, hurled over across the next room into the wall. She then held up one hand, and Ron goggled, her fingernails extended, ripping through the tips of the glove that she wore, and it was hardened into the claws to which she used to bury her hand and deep inside the armor plaiting the robot. She ripped out the mask of security and security, and then, wiring the robot in spasmed and sputtered into before collapsing at Faye's feet. Faye's grin was almost completely wrapped in around her head. Her eyes were dilated with excitement. "Who's next?" she cried out in delight. She caught a sight of the rest of the robots and dove into the fray. And with a wild yell, Ron stared in shock, unable to turn away from the carnage as well as being unable to keep from imagining what he'd be looking at. The robots were as human beings. Eventually the robots were dispatched, and Faye stole back over to Ron, wiping her brow. "Oh my God, that was incredible," she said brightly. She grabbed Ron by the front of the shirt and then pulled him into a deep, forceful kiss. "Thanks for convincing me to stay, Ronnie. That was fun, but off for now. You can clean up here, right? Thanks." With that, Faye then fired the grapple into the rafters and was gone within seconds. Ron rubbed his face with one hand and turned to leave, only to come face to face with Dr. Director, who had hauled Dementor down to the testing floor. "Who is that and where did she came from, Ronald?" Director asked. "A third one?" Dementor asked. "How many more of these surprises must I endure now? Ow!" Dementor then passed out as Director zapped him with her Global Justice stopwatch. She handed the mad scientist off to the several feet of the Global Justice agents, then back to Ron. "Now, as I was saying, who was that?" she repeated. Ron then sighed and gave Dr. Director one of the most word-whirly looks she had ever seen. "Her name is Faye, and believe me, we'd rather not have her be a part of the team." And with that, Ron then turned to Global Justice Leader and made their way out of the lair to meet up with the ride Wade had set for them. Behind him, Dr. Director frowned in conclusion and worried. Kim came as dawn was breaking. To her surprise, she was lying on the couch in the treehouse behind Ron's house. She sat up and looked at her communicator. There were no messages. She sighed in frustration and recorded one of her own. "The next time you feel unscheduled change coming on, do us both a favor and make sure to leave a message, even if it's just to let me know where you parked the car. Thanks." She then got up off the couch and began climbing down the tree. She sneaked through the stoppable backyard into the backyard of her own house. She got her keys out of their pocket and slipped the key into the back of the door of the lock. No sooner she turned the key, she heard the bolt open. The doors whooshed open, and Kim then looked in stern, borderline panicked faces of her parents. Hi," Kim said, unaware of the blush that was coming from her cheeks. She then heard the 9 words that dreaded did more than anything else in her life. "Kimberly Ann Possible, we need to have a talk." The fact that it was her mother saying them only upped the dread factor. Dr. Director was sitting on her desk, going over the recordings of the raid project on Professor Dementor's lair. She was thrilled to see that Ron Stoppable was finally able to hold his own in a fight. It made it clear the likelihood of recruiting Team Possible in the future much easier to the project. Ron factor aside, Stoppable always seemed unsuitable, or at least for far as global justice regulations went, not that he had any intention of distracting them from their college studies. After all, global justice required at least an associate's degree before a placement would be considered for formal training. As she continued reviewing the footage, Dr. Director frowned as she saw a son and parents of the woman Stoppable had referred to as Faye. She backed the footage up in moments and noticed something odd. When Faye showed up, Kim Possible had vanished from the scene completely. Dr. Director backed the video up feed further. There was Kim taking on a few of Dementor's goons. She tossed the one who ended up landing on Dementor, and then Director's good eye widened. She then paused the feed and backed it up and slowed it down, wanting a confirmation of what she just saw. "My God, Kimberly," she whispered. "What's happening to you?" The phone call from Director's desk rang. Not taking her eyes off the screen, she hit the button for the speaker. "Director, go." The call is for you, Dr. Director. Alpha clearance," came the voice of her assistant. Director sighed, and Alpha clearance meant for the UN Security Council, to which Global Justice got their mandate, probably whining about their budget again. "Tell them I'm busy. I'll talk to the finance later." It's not about the budget, Dr. Director," the assistant said, "and it's not about the Security Council." Director then turned to look on the phone. The only other organization was Alpha Clearance it's ICAD. The assistant pronounced the outcome, ICAD, informing their suspicions. "What department?" A call from ICAD, while never for good news. It wasn't a total emergency. ICAD 1, the assistant answered. "Shit," the director muttered under her breath. ICAD was one of the name of the code's head for the International Care Assurance Development. She had never met the man in person, but she hit her encounters with him, and they were never pleasant. He had an iron fist of approaching the crime fighting, and a total immortal attitude when it comes to things like human rights. If Director had her defers, she'd prefer to find the bastard and lock him up. Unfortunately, ICAD was Special International Security Department created by the UN Security Council, and was also the department to the Global Justice to answer, which meant ICAD was one technically her boss. In fact, she was sure ICAD one loved to lord her. She then sighed in frustration. "Put him on." There was a click, and the gravelly masculine voice came on the line. Hello, Dr. Director. Been a long time. Not long enough after me, Dr. Director said. What do you want? 1. ICAD made a clicking noise with his tongue. Why the emergency, Director? We both want the same thing. Tell that to those 14 civilians in Belize. Ancient history, Betty. We need to look into the future. Director rolled her eyes. Oh, Lord, the future we need to look in a bit. That was never good. The future in what way, she asked. I've been viewing the footage of your last operation. Interesting use of the cheerleader and her sidekick. Director relaxed. Oh, another argument using the untrained, independent, crime-fighting operatives. She had been working for this one before the ICAD one. If you're going to open up to this can of worms again. Not at all. In fact, I have to admit, you were right about them. They seem likely they've gotten better with age. Even the sidekick seems to have learned some comprehensions. Glad you agree. You could just call them the offit for compliments. Do you really need to curb with that tongue of yours, Betty? ICAD's one of the only came harder and less pleasant. If that's not even possible, it could also lead to sorts of trouble. What do you want? I want the cheerleader. The director looked at the phone in shock. What do you want with Kimberly? Actually, I'm not interested in the cheerleader as so much of the other person she's changed into the middle of the fight. Director swelled. Clearly, she wasn't the one who had noticed Kim's metamorphosis on the feed. What do you want with her, 1? You saw what she did to the mentor and his goons. She got talent and skills, and that cheerleader doesn't. Imagine those talents and skills in her hands. What do you mean hands? Director corrected. I don't think I've ever got the mandate either. Regardless, the security console has spoken. Find possible, bring her in, we get her and have her get the other one. And then we can figure out how to take her to our advantage. What makes you think I'm going to lift one finger out to help you kidnap Kim? ICAD 1 chuckled. Well, Betty, what do you think of security console has authorized me to do if you don't? Director growled. Those bastards. They actually gave him to go ahead and pull global justice from under her. He had always used that threat before when he wanted her to do his dirty work. The only indicated of how badly he wanted Kim, to which it made the situation more intolerable. All right, damn it, she finally answered, deflating. Don't double me, cross me, Betty, ICAD 1 said, the menacing growling in his voice. I'm letting you bring her in because you have a relationship with her, and you don't want me to take over the job. Understood. Good 3 days. There was a click of silence. Director sighed and began leaning back in her chair. I'm sorry, Kimberly.